welcome back to Linux Weekly Daily Wednesdays, where we take a break from the gaming and focus more on the technology that is empowering it. I'm Vin Stone.
I am Pedro Mateos.
And I'm Matthew Commando.
All right, lads, let's get right into the most Linuxy of Linuxy topics in the possible world, and that's Microsoft.
Windows, specifically.
Microsoft, because now Microsoft is big on open source and all that stuff. And they just open source their JavaScript engine that powers the Edge browser and as well also the universal Windows platform. So what is this? This is kind of like a Node equivalent currently. They made it available on Linux and OS X. Well,
wait, isn't this the one that only works on Internet Explorer and Edge?
No, it only works on Edge. Not even.
Okay, that's okay. All right.
Yeah, that's the Internet Explorer one was like an old crappy engine, and now they have rewritten everything for the Edge browser, and it's supposedly much better. I mean, I don't know because I have no idea how well.
It's still Internet Explorer, and I'm not entirely sure I like the idea of introducing one of the biggest security black holes into Linux and OS X.
Yeah, I mean, that's not the same thing as Internet Explorer. We don't know yet.
I said one of, not the biggest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure the Edge browser is a bit more secure than IE.
I don't know,
yeah,
man.
Anyway,
I mean, one of the biggest things I'm thinking about, I'm sitting here listening to this, is why in the gosh darn heck would you trust a closed source browser outside of Chrome, because Google's awesome, in 2016?
Yeah, well, that's the point. The JavaScript engine here is open source and now multi-platform. So they are pushing. So they're not going to ship a browser on Linux. I mean, I don't think that's their plan. But they are pushing for like multi-platform programming.
Oh, please let them put Edge on Linux. Please, please. I want it.
No, that's not going to happen. I don't think so. But yeah, we used to have Java and .NET for multi-platform. Now we have JS. We used to have, for example, with Java, we used to have like huge IDEs and games like Minecraft. And now we have in JS like these text editors, which we can use to write JS. And there's wrappers around web pages with Electron. So
we'll get to that.
Yeah, I mean, just to put a bow on this particular story is Microsoft quit trying to make Edge a thing. But all right, that is enough Microsoft. So we definitely need to.
No, it's not.
Crap, all right.
Because Microsoft released an update for Windows 10, namely the anniversary update. Yes, the big one. And it's nuking people's Linux partitions. The first thing I would like to get out of the way is good. This will weed out the filthy dual booting heathens. That's a start. But, yeah, no, it's the new update. Apparently, there have been several people on Twitter reporting that when they ran the anniversary update on Windows 10, their Linux partition was noped. Like, irrevocably noped. You could try and retrieve some of the data, but it was basically unusable. So, what's Microsoft's reasoning for this? They haven't officially put out a statement, but I'm guessing it's something along the lines of, you already have Bash working on Windows 10. Why do you need Linux?
No, man, it's nothing like that. I forget the exact saying, but it's basically don't blame on whatever that you can blame on stupidity, and we're talking about Microsoft here.
Don't blame on malice, which is perfectly explainable by stupidity.
Yeah, very close to that. And you don't have to worry about if this nukes the partitions of a filthy dual booting heathen. I mean, because, they will still claim that they run 6 Linux. And they will still interject and comment on all the things. But
I was
kind of worried when I first saw this. And I was like, maybe. But, then Alan Pope kind of chimed in. And I was like, there might be some validity to this. We don't exactly know the full story. What were you saying, Nacho?
Yeah, I don't run 6 Linuxes, but I do have a system that allows me to play Doom, and now I'm
Nothing would
afraid to play
satisfy
Doom.
me more if it had nuked your
And it's on the same SSD than my main Ubuntu install, so now I'm a bit afraid of launching Doom, my Doom OS.
Well, think about it, though. I mean, he who is whatever, which is all the sayings, we're getting them out of the way early in the show, cast the first stone, because we were talking before the show, the initial release of Steam OS nuked everything from orbit by default, Pedro.
Yeah, they did. They had a bit of a check that if it couldn't find a Steam root folder, it would just basically run rmrf /**, which would nuke your entire home folder. That was awesome.
Okay, well, let's move on to non-micro thing.
GNOME Maps. Yeah, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Basically, it was the Maps application for GNOME that could not display maps anymore because the service they were using.
You see, if you're listening
MapQuest.
at home,
Yep.
it basically just showed a tiles of MapQuest developer, and it was just that tiled over, which I call the sporting edition. This is the fun way to get directions, but they've disabled that, right?
Yeah, they had reached their usage limits with the MapQuest API. So they could not use that anymore. And they had several options to make that work again. And it seems that they went with Mapbox instead. So, I mean, it's still some kind of closed service. I mean, they say they are dedicated to open source and all those things, but it's still a very closed service. So they're switching from one closed service to another one. I mean, it's no Google Maps. So, I mean,
That's what I was about to ask everyone at home chilling out. I mean, leave us a comment, whatever way you want to see this or view this, and let us know, because that's what I want to ask Pedro. Is like, is there any chance of, I mean, what did this affect? Was this like, oh, yes, both users were just terribly upset and everyone else went, okay, Google?
Yeah, basically. And that's one of the things I originally asked when we first ran the story, that they were sort of noping the GNOME maps because MapQuest was just not having it. And how intrusive would it be to sign an agreement with Google to get the tiles from Google Maps? Is it really that hard? Is it really that intrusive that they don't want to do it?
It's maybe not hard, but it must be expensive.
It could be expensive. Yes. Then you could also run the risk of the Googs being like, I bet we put a few ads on there, Brad. And you know how well that worked with Amazon and Ubuntu, right? With the Unity thing? Swimmingly, everyone loved it out of the box, and they definitely should do that. Free advice. But, and something that could be only explained is, seriously, are you effing with me? FCC forces TP-Link to support open source firmware, resulting in good guy FCC question. Ask. You might remember, back in the long ago, which was a couple of months back, the TP-Link, they admitted, it was like, okay, yeah, there's a thing in there which everyone would normally use anyway to kind of overvolt it, being simplified. They turned it to 11 to get a little bit more juice out of your router organ, and that was pretty neat. And the FCC is like, you can't do that. Like, okay, fine. But earlier, FCC is like, you know what? We don't need third-party software running on these routers because people might use that. Pedro, what did they do? And when they settled this, I guess you'd call it a lawsuit. They didn't do anything.
Well, it wasn't exactly a lawsuit. It was just the FCC sort of muscling them into submission, as it were, because the way that with the new rules the FCC set in place for routers and bridges and what have yous is that you would have to limit the frequency that a router or what have yous operates at, so it doesn't interfere with anything else. That's one of the basic FCC rules. So TP-Link, because they're lazy, or maybe not so lazy, they decided, okay, let's just prevent any and everyone from installing a open source firmware package to the router, like OpenWRT or DDWRT. But as we have now found out, that didn't solve the issue, because TP-Link's choice to block some firmware actually stemmed from a faulty implementation out of the box, which right from the start didn't adhere to the FCC's regulations, and they were afraid that DDWRT or OpenWRT or any of the other open source ones would sort of bring to light the ability to operate at frequencies which violate those issues. There's no way a company would be that shady, right?
I don't know. I mean, but what this actually applies to today, what we're talking about is this is for the new rules for the 5 gigahertz band, and this is with the FCC. I mean, they were going to require the makers to prevent third-party firmware from changing the frequency parameters. And then they just told, these lot, there was like, hey, TP-Link, you got to let people put third-party software in there. And it's like, wow, okay, guess what? Putting your floss software on there will bring back with a quickness, Strider. What do you think the first thing that's going to get re-enabled?
That's the thing. I mean, if they want to block those frequencies, those radio frequencies, why don't they make this at a hardware level? I mean, it shouldn't be that complicated, right? I mean, if they want to block it to operate at certain frequencies, then they do it right in the hardware. So you can install anything you want, software related, and you can't mess with the frequencies. That seems sane, right?
Well, that's the lazy bit.
Well, that's a lot cheaper to do in software than do like a recall on all the hardware. That's never going to happen. But.
Teeny tiny things.
Itsy bitsy, teeny tiny, and for $149, you too can have something that kind of resembles a computer, almost, on a good day. Yes, we are talking about what the StarCloud PCG61 mini PC rolls right off your tongue. What does it come with? A couple options, 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gig SSD, and you get the Ubuntu 16.04 on there. The others two are Windows 10 options. So you know what? Just forget about that. But if you want to get one that's even remotely usable, you go to the store, you can check it out. You're looking at 199 wet stinky caches for 4 gigs of your memory and 64 gigs of storage. You get free shipping and pretty quick turnaround on the delivery time, anywhere between 26 and 44 days. I don't know, man.
At this point, the Zotac Pico still feels like a better alternative. The only thing that the what is it called? The StarCloud PCG61 has over the Zotac Pico is the USB ports, basically the IOs, USBs, and video ports. How many of those do you really need if you're, say, in a work environment that would require one of these boxes just attached to the back of the monitor?
I don't know, Strider. Is this anything more than a router on human growth hormones?
No, it's not a router. It's a bit more powerful than this, but don't expect it to use it as your main computer or at home. That's not the point, I guess. What it is meant for, and which it seems very good at it, is to be used as kiosk or other type of public computers, like in libraries or stuff like this. And I mean, it could do quite a good job for this. What I noticed on the prices is that the Windows version is quite a bit more expensive than the Linux version. There's a $100 difference with the Linux version. So usually when OEMs, they sell computer with Windows, there's only a tiny difference between Linux and Windows. So I guess they didn't have a very good deal with Microsoft on this one.
They didn't have a very good deal at all, because Microsoft will usually give them so good a deal that they can actually sell the Ubuntu and Windows variants at exactly the same price.
Right. The only color this is available in is PCG61. So
yes,
do keep that in mind when you're making your purchasing decision. But Pedro, we need to take a moment and read an advertisement to keep the show going, don't we?
How about we don't, and instead of reading said advertisement, we only thank the awesome, insane people that keep giving us money week after week so we can keep doing this. Yes.
Oh my God. Look at that, man.
All
90
our
Patreons.
Patreons.
Check that business out. Hooking us up. I'm getting some cool stuff back in turn, but keeping us ad-free, preventing us from being shills. But depending on who you are, everyone thinks one of us is a shill for something. By Dr. Pepper.
I admitted that. I admitted it.
But no, that's definitely a thing. Keeping us going. If you want to do that, kick in. We have like 73 Patreon only rewards that you can pick up just by, kicking in, a buck a show if you like that, or maybe a quarter, That's something we definitely want to give you something in return. And speaking of that, we had a little bit of a contest last week. Where we said we had a copy of Skullgirls and a copy of Payday 2 laying around. And it turns out, we had more than 2 Patreons. So it was like, okay, we're going to do this extremely technical, detailed contest. Tell them about it, Pedro. I pulled it up.
Yeah, basically all you had to do was you would go to last week's post of Linux Weekly Daily Wednesday, and you would have to reply, gimme. That's it. That's all you would need to do. And we had 9 entries. Am I getting this right?
9 comments. Yeah, you just type in.
Yep.
So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to do 9, starting from the top with Steve and ending with Artex. All Patreons kicking in. So, super scientific way of doing this.
Random.org.
So let's change that to a 9. Okay, it's the big moment. Sit back.
1 to 9. Away we go.
And
to our audio listeners.
Number 6.
Number 6.
This is like bingo with Linux. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. TechMad.
Woohoo!
Okay. All you have to do. Actually, I'll just contact you through Patreon. I'm pretty sure. I think one of them is a Steam gift I have to send. So if that's the case, we'll have to hook up and chill out for a moment on Steam. If not, I'll just send you the key directly, and you won't have to worry.
I think we have to roll again for the other one, though, right?
That's for a later time. I said, well, you can pick.
All right.
You can pick one of the 2 gifts, right?
Okay. All right.
So if we can't give them both away, and we kind of have like a race to pick, that would not be fair, Pedro.
Yeah, I suppose that's
okay.
Thing.
48.8. What's this? Never heard of it.
This is Firefox. It's a new version. It's it's the 48.0 release. They have all the notes that the changelog that you would. The first thing that struck me while I was reading this, don't worry, you'll be able to find a link in the show notes once this is published. It's did they absolutely have to phrase it as cringely as they did?
Oh, you noticed that, did you?
Yes, add-ons that have not been verified and signed by Mozilla will not load. Okay, that's as usual. But then, right before that, you have Roar for More, protection against harmful downloads. We've got your back. Really?
Yes, really. One thing I was looking at, I'd like some more clarification, but I'm guessing is what they have a process separation, and there's like that's like the thing Chrome did on day 1, like 8 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm right about that. But one thing I am excited about is, Strider just thinks I spend 23 hours a day. It was like, Firefox is evil, which I don't know, like Firefox. I just hope they pull a summer and get the rest back together. But they've kind of moron-proofed the add-on systems. There's a legitimate check now that if they have not been verified and signed by Mozilla, they're not going to load. So, fortunately, maybe when you have to go fix the next person's computer, they won't have 30 search bars installed, Strider.
Yeah, and that's all good. And they've released a few improvements for WebRTC, so that's good as well. What's missing here, and I've been waiting for this for months, is the GTK3 ports to be finished, so we can finally have multi-touch supports, or even touch supports. That would be really cool. That's something I've been waiting for.
If you follow us on any type of social media, you know that Firefox 48 does, in fact, run, at least here on the 1404 system, which it should. The Canvas speedups, I didn't really know. I didn't play with it a terribly long time because it's not really my cup of beans. We did try it with WebRTC, which we use for our video system, and yeah, that's rubbish. So you still
wasn't doing so well with the video.
Still got some work to do on that, Foxfire. Oh, look, games.
Yes. Yes, games. Well, sort of. This is actually one of those projects by
What? All right,
Daft Mike.
I'm just looking. I'm looking at the thumbnail in the video. Is it really necessary to point out I have a Raspberry Pi and a 3D printer, and I'm a huge nerd? I mean, really?
Yeah, it really isn't. Everyone can sort of figure that out. Even with the NES Mini that Nintendo announced a while back, because this is what it's very similar. And yeah, you know that probably the NES Mini has a Raspberry Pi or something along those lines working inside it. But this is the genuine thing. You get the Raspberry Pi and a
that's
custom.
So cool. Look at it.
Yes. And the funny thing about those cartridges is that they are basically RFID based. They just tell whatever operating system you're running, which in his case, I think it was Pybian. I could be wrong about that.
Pedro, what everyone's wondering, do you have to blow on them, though?
Probably not, since they don't really have contacts. It's just RFID. You just shove them in there. There's a RFID signature thing inside the cartridge, and you put it in there.
Now everyone knows how Vin feels playing video games.
Yeah, that's the thing. He made everything 40% smaller. The console, the controller, the cartridges, everything. So he had some compromises to make. Now, if you were one of those people screaming at Nintendo when they announced the NES Minis, like if you were saying something along the lines of, why can't you load more games because the NES Mini only has 30? Why is there no network connectivity? What's the point of all of this? Well, for at least two of those questions, you have the Raspberry Pi and a 3D printed case, and there's a much better option like Daft Mike here did. This is probably not going to be, or it's not going to round up to the whole $35 cost when you factor in the Raspberry Pi, the 3D printed case, and the controller.
Don't forget the 3D printer, the filament, and that. Yes, probably
but there are some shops that offer like 3D printing for a modical fee. Yes, so you can probably get around to it, but this has the advantage that you'll be able to play all of the NES, SNES, PlayStation, PSP, Game Boy, and whatever other emulator you can find. You can play all of those games. All of them. Now, I did think
Dreamcast as well.
Yeah, the cartridge thing with the RFID was neat, but real-world use case, it's completely unnecessary. You could just, let a teeny tiny slit open on the 3D printed case and just shove an SD card in there with it.
You don't even need several SD cards. I mean, you could just need to put all your games on one SD card, and then with RetroPie, you just select your games, and that's quite okay as well.
Well, while you're hitting refresh on your RTC instance there, I'm also.
Are you using Firefox, Strider?
When I first saw that,
my computer
with the cartridge-based system, be quiet while you're doing that, and don't type in your keyboard very loud. What you're about to do. I was like, maybe he'll put like a little SD card in there and actually just load, just a little sip there on your 64 gigabyte SD card. It's like, that'd be horribly stupid. And I was like, I don't care. It'd still be neat. But then again, RFID, that is still pretty good. But, you can't have just one Pi story. You got to have two. Because we're talking about mobilizing the Internet of Things. Drinko, the Synchro Bar Thud. Yes. It's a drink robot. You have to do a custom PCB. You're going to need a Raspberry Pi B, mainly because the motors require 12 volts. I think they're like 300 milliamps. And you also, got to put together that little power board because you can't pull that on a standard Ras Pi B. But this can mix 4 happy liquids with an app. There's the board, with a Drinko app. And you can almost, you're like 2 ingredients short with those 4 making a Long Island iced tea, Pedro.
Yeah, it's booze and electronics, my second and third favorite things in the whole wide world. Yes, please.
I think everyone in the chat realm should get one, should build one, so that could spice up the drinking games during the Saturday show.
I don't know, man. I definitely think it's neat. I like it. There's nothing crazy about this, but, Man, when you see people building stuff like this, you're just like, hey, man, if you have an addiction issue and you can still apply that to creating and being a maker, that's awesome. It's just great times. But I heard the Vive has got a little Linux support, maybe?
An unofficial one at that. Yes, OSVR, the July 2016 developer updates. The biggest things, there are only 4 of them, according to the highlights bit there, which is enhanced support for OSVR devices inside Steam VR, including direct mode and distortion correction. Support for the new OSVR HDK 2, as well as new support for the HTC-Vive. Also native support for OSVR inside Unreal 4.12 and OSVR support inside WebVR.
That makes Baby Vin cry, CMake. Right.
Yeah.
What's wrong?
But yeah, the biggest thing here is Vive. It is currently, well, sort of, kind of unofficially supported under Linux.
Well, I know for a fact in my VR thing, we have the 6 Degree of Freedom Descent. No, is it Descent?
Yeah. Descent Underground.
Yes.
Descent Underground VR support, and I think recently Distance Racing Game just added it. But Strider, you had a couple things to say about this.
Yeah, I mean, we are. There's one guy was to test this, and it's Mike Tian. Mike Tian, you have some work to do. You have to test this, and when you have a good report on this, then yeah, I mean,
he's testing it right now. You're part of the simulation.
That's cool. So the other thing was about WebVR. WebVR. I mean, last week we had somebody tell us about, okay, VR on phone. Why is this a thing? Because people are getting sick even with the high def VR stuff. So on phones and on the web, this is the same thing. Is this something made specifically for people to get sick?
No, man. What we need to do is bring back VRML, and that will solve everything, right?
Well, it's probably going to be that YouTube theater mode that they're doing, where you basically just simulate you're in a theater and you're staring at
wanting to 3D print something, because I take my Nexus 10, which has that redonkulous resolution screen on it, which is high enough to do, and it can do 60 frames a second. It can't do 90, but the YouTube app will let me put it in that. And I was like, man, I want to get the lenses and like rig that up and fall off my upstairs deck.
The only closing bits I have about this story are the community made the Vive work before Valve did. Where's that commitment, Valve?
That sounds a whole lot like Valve. Yeah, it sounds a whole lot like Valve. Yeah. And tomorrow they'll release. They're like, oh yeah, we'd finished that. We just never released it. Here it is, guys. So, all right. Okay.
But let's kick off to our Electron story of the week. Strider.
The week, yeah. So we talked last week about an X window server built with, well, more or less with Node. But this time we have sort of window manager. So it's called the Electron Window Manager. What it allows you to do is more likely to build apps that will span across multiple windows. This won't allow you to manage your Linux windows. So it's kind of a stretch to call it a window manager.
Yeah, you see, last week you called me out because when I pointed out that little Node.js story that we had, it wasn't exactly a window manager.
Yeah.
And I said that it really wasn't a good idea to have a browser managing your desktop. Well, now you can't really call me out, can you? But you're still going to try.
I can't, but yeah, this is not a window manager in the sense.
I love it.
No, it's like it's not like Compass or MetaCity or that kind of stuff.
No, it's new, man, and you just hate new stuff. I love Strider. He won't go down without a fight, man. He's like swinging on his way down.
No, this is
because this is like straight up. I was like, does it manage Windows? Matthew,
it does,
yes or no?
It's like saying Qt or GTK are window manager because you can create apps that will have multiple windows. That is mainly the point.
Meta City is a window manager built entirely off of GTK Plus. What are you getting at?
JLib. JLib, that's the library they're using for Meta City. They're not using GTK. GTK is on top of
Plus, yes.
Meta City. So it won't allow you to. It doesn't sit on top of your X server. That's the point. It's only for one app.
Next. Stream the Chromecast because you hate yourself. Let's do it from the command line because we run Linux. It is what it says on the tin. It's a Chromecast media stream for Linux, but you have to install the elusive libav tools. Strider, that's a name I've not heard in a long time.
libav, yeah. I mean, someone is not aware that FFmpeg is now back in Ubuntu, and it has been for a while.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. It's your least favorite scripting language, Python, so let's keep that in mind. But yeah, this is basically a transcoder. You can set your volume, you can stream from your desktop to your Chromecast, and all the time going like, F you, Plex, for being usable and available on all Linux systems and being able to stream from Chrome.
And intuitive?
Yeah. Strider, why do you hate yourself so much? Why do you love this?
I mean, I've never used Plex, so I have no idea how simple Plex is.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that this solution is a bit more simple to use because you don't have to set up a Plex server or a Plex client, that is. So if you want to bring your Chromecast and stream from anywhere to anything, then you can use that. So not as complex as Plex, I guess.
Spoken like somebody who's clearly never used Plex, because this is about 30 times more complex than Plex ever thought about being. I'm shilling for Plex, yay! The cache check. All right,
and it's not just that. It's this is for just Chromecast. While Plex just works on everything.
Yeah,
you've got a box laying around that you're not using. Plex server.
Plex is the herpes of media apps for anything. Basically, you can just put Plex on anything. It works like a charm. However, this is completely open source, because I know a lot of people are like, but Plex isn't open source. You know, it's like, okay, are you going to display that on your open source TV? Wait, that's different. And I was like, no, Brad, it's not.
Or your open source NVIDIA drivers.
Well, you're going to use your open. Well, actually, you might actually have an open source router. Thanks, FCC. Callback.
Yeah, thanks, FCC.
No, all this business is going to be on our show notes, and we're not quite done, because 2 Windows stories is a bad idea. 3 Windows stories, however, is a slightly worse idea. And let's just go ahead and bring that in.
Yeah, let's talk about Microsoft and Windows a little bit more. So this time, really nothing to do with Linux itself, in that they have changed their driver signing requirements for Windows. So from now on, you will not be able to use non-signed drivers in Windows unless you have disabled secure boot.
Well, so I mean, they do point out, like, this type of enforcement is only going to happen on fresh installations and, with stuff that has been just previous, and it's only going to come on with secure boot, like you said. But then again, this is good guy Microsoft, so they should reword that as enforcement only happens on fresh installations with secure boot on for now. Because I can definitely see that under the guise of security, because Microsoft really tried to pull this in Genesis. They're like, let's lock it down, and you can only install Microsoft because security. Really? Is it all about security, Microsoft? Absolutely. Would we lie? And I was like, well, didn't you just lie about that Xbox One thing not being more powerful than original just to sell more units in between the time but when you released it? Maybe. Pedro?
Probably. And you guys may remember last week when Team Sweeney said that Microsoft would make games in Steam on Windows progressively worse.
Still,
well,
all right. Before you get into that, isn't it just a wicked good feeling when you launch Dust and you get to see Microsoft Studios show up?
Yeah,
Linux?
Microsoft Studios on Linux.
Yeah, winning.
But yeah, so they haven't hit Steam yet. But drivers sound as good a place to start as any. As in, you can't get NVIDIA's game-ready drivers because those don't pass Microsoft certification. NVIDIA just makes them available through the GeForce experience, and you just get them.
I kind of like how this is a little bit malicious. It's like, yeah, we'll let you boot it if it's still in there, but once we've got it booted, we're going to remove any kernel drivers.
Oh, yeah. Now, let's say those drivers give you better performance in Vulkan, would say,
or
Doom,
they're critical to your infrastructure, the corporation A, B, or C for security.
Yes, because you have a specific bug that NVIDIA fixed, and they released a non-signed driver just to get you up and running. Are you using Secure Boot? Well, then you're boned. Because how long do you think it will take Microsoft to stop certifying something that makes Vulkan perform better than DirectX 12? Because DirectX 12 is their in-house API. That's what they're using. That's what they're pushing. But Vulkan isn't. Vulkan is the open API that is giving better, if not, or similar, if not better performance than DirectX 12. So similarly to how Apple, they refuse to certify anything outside of Metal and OpenGL. How long do you think it will take Microsoft to stop certifying drivers that perform better with Vulkan?
Okay, I'm not going to argue. We're not arguing whether or not Microsoft's stupid, but we're arguing degrees of severity of just stupidity.
Yeah.
I don't think they're quite that stupid, Strider, or are we just like being conspiracy theorists, man? Be like, oh, this could happen. Panic, be afraid.
And I don't think that's they will cripple the NVIDIA drivers on purpose. It seems a bit of a stretch to think they would, but I mean, it's not impossible. What I found interesting is that they said that they were not going to block boot drivers in order not to have like unbootable systems. But in future versions of Windows, they will block unsigned boot drivers. So
to prevent from booting properly, but they will be removed by the program compatibility. I love how they call the Captain Death the compatibility assistant. For future versions of Windows, we'll block the boot drivers. Microsoft cares, right?
Yeah, Microsoft cares.
Okay, that's going to close it out for the show, but don't run away just yet because we have some feedback, Pete, man.
Yes, we do. And if you'd like to leave us some feedback of your own, if you see the show, post it on YouTube, Facebook, Google+, Twitter, Patreon. Just make sure to track down the original post and leave us a comment there. We'll be happy to feature your thing if it's, something that we should bring up. Otherwise, we'll just reply to you right then and there. Otherwise, you can also go to linuxgamecast.com, hit the contact button on the nav bar, fill out the form, pick LWDW for Linux Weekly Daily Wednesday, and we will feature your thing on this very show. So, up first, we have Ryan G, who was catching up on LWDW, and he saw the motherboard story that was calling PC gaming still far too difficult. And he said, just catching up on LWDW and the motherboard person is pathetic. My 10-year-old put together his own PC and installed Ubuntu on it with minimal guidance. Yeah. Who was it? Was it Total Biscuit that said that if you're claiming that PC gaming is too difficult, maybe you shouldn't write for a website called Motherboard?
Yeah, after reading that, I forget who the blogger was that wrote that editorial piece of like, really? I was like, your mother still does your laundry, doesn't she? Strider.
Is that the same Ryan G that we had on the show?
I don't think it was.
No.
That was a different Ryan G.
I detected a serious lack of mayonnaise vibe coming off that. So, yeah,
yes.
I don't think it's him.
No, I mean, nowadays, building a PC is really simple, yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about the 2%. Way back when, it's been about 3 weeks ago, we were talking about, Linux hitting the 2%, right?
Yes.
Doing all that. Roven, I know I'm butchering that, and you're already screaming and yelling, I got your monitor. 2%. How would they get the info question mark? If you use Linux, do you almost never come in, well, is that right? You do almost never come in contact with Windows on the interwebs. Put otherwise, all those sites you browsed, quote unquote, were to find something for your Windows, which you no longer have /use. If you would record the data, server logs, of all the Linux sites, you would get a market share of 98% Linux. What?
So this person doesn't know what a user agent is or what the browser is reporting to the server.
No, I mean, the thing is, we don't spend our time to browse either Linux websites when we use Linux or Windows sites when we use Windows. I mean, we also browse normal websites that don't relate to either Linux or Windows.
You just slow down, man. What are you talking about? Normal websites? Are you saying LinuxGamecast.com is like not a normal website?
Seriously, you're asking that question, Ben?
Less geeky websites, and even on Linux specific websites, I mean, Linux market share is far below 98%. OMG Ubuntu released some stats a couple years ago, I think, and the Linux usage was about 50%, something like that. Mm-hmm. And you have other websites which have nothing to do with Linux or Windows, but which are developer websites. W3 Schools released some stats a while ago, and they had like 5% Linux market share. Mm-hmm. Then again, if you're a Linux user, you may know better than use the W3 Schools because it's not.
Yeah, you just
best.
go to Stack Overflow.
Yeah, I mean, just measuring that, I mean, there's like lies, damn lies, and statistics. I could make that say whatever I want because there's so many variables to play with. Because you have people that use nothing but Linux, but they're stuck at work and they have to use internet, whatever, Explorer, and they cannot do anything about that. And, you look at people, I mean, most people who visit LinuxGamecast.com, it's like, look, man, it's like 90% IRIX. And, we got a couple of people that run Linux. But no, I mean, we're primarily Linux, but you got a site that has nothing to do with operating system, and you look at that like a general site that, none of us would ever visit. Like, I can think of a couple. I'm just not going to call them out. But yeah, man, any final thoughts on that? That's a thing. I mean, measuring, you can make basically what I'm saying is you can make the numbers anything you want, Pedro.
Yeah, and what everyone keeps parroting on the internet is the fact that, Linux is less than 1% on the Steam hardware survey. Okay. Yes, hardware survey. And
you mean that thing I've gotten twice in one time was when I was installing Wine? That one?
That very same one,
okay.
Yes. Yeah, no, let's just go on ahead and chat. He had some things to say. I am a lazy expletive, spawn of a expletive, so I've only gotten around to looking at the show notes once. With the plethora of ways of pronouncing commands, Ven's weird accent aside, I often fail to parse them. Would it be possible to have the hosts prepare stickies with commands they are intending to reference and just paste them in the relevant FU, FU in the chat realm dynamic as they mention it? No real need to show a terminal window, that ticker is there anyhow, but if the standard out is referred to, maybe? Linux Weekly Daily Wednesdays has slacked my interest for early Linux Gamecast weekly shows, and sorry I can't afford to give regularly. Hey man, we appreciate whenever you give, and I still haven't forgotten how you want to kick me off of Linux Gamecast weekly.
You've been voted off the island. No, that does remind me. The Chad definitely kicked us in a PayPal donation for...
yes, he did.
The gaming show, Linux Gamecast. Yeah, that little thing we do. Also, Kim T kicked in on the Patreons, and so did Fox Dog. the creator of Brick Simulator, the only title made by LGC
The one and
Studios.
only.
Yeah. It's kind of brilliant. As far as what the chat was saying, so Strider, am I getting this right? If I'm reading this right, putting it through my brain organ, it looks like if we had like an automated system that just like dealt out the notes in the chat room while we were talking.
Not automated, like something where we could just like paste the commands we reference on the show. But then again, I mean, MT and Frojo are making a very good point here.
I like MT's command. That's awesome.
Don't trust things that are pasted in chat realm ever. I mean, if you can't fan out the commands
everyone remembers
yourself,
Jordan's brilliant little thing in Chat Realm Static, right? Where he
Yeah.
just does with the NVIDIA installation.
So yeah, I would discourage you from copying anything pasted into that channel.
I think what we can do as a compromise is in the show notes on the main page, if we're naming off anything like that, we'll make it a point to, put some code blocks in there and show off. We'll show our work as they used to force you to do it. I was like, but I cheated and I can't. As I used to say. But that is definitely going to do it for this week's Linux Weekly Daily Wednesday, but we will see you again next week. And I've been Vince Stone.
I have been Pedro Mateos.
And I have been Mathieu Commando.
All right, that's going to do it. We will, again, see you next week. Maybe I saw somebody on YouTube, like, comparing different types of bread to use as ankle rest, like baguettes, for typing. Maybe we'll get you to try some of those out.
Yeah.
Yes, we require video.